In today's video, a 40-year-old American mountaineer and her Russian husband, an elite climber known across the Caucasus as the Snow Leopard for soloing the 5 highest peaks of the former Soviet Union, attempt to summit Mount Everest without supplemental oxygen, an achievement no American woman has ever accomplished, and they succeed on May 22, 1998, in conditions that will kill 10 experienced climbers across the same season, and 40 hours later, she lies dying on the upper ridge at 8,600 meters, unable to form a new sentence, repeating 3 phrases on loop, while a South African couple who interrupted their own summit kneels beside her for an hour before the cold drives them down. Her husband disappears that same morning. Her body sits exposed on the ridge for the next 9 years. Francys Yarbrough was born on January 18, 1958, in Honolulu, Hawaii. She studied business at the University of Columbia and worked in finance through her 20s and into her 30s before turning seriously to mountains. In 1992, she married Sergei Arsentiev, the Russian climber who had soloed the 5 highest peaks of the former Soviet Union, earning him the Snow Leopard title in Russian alpine circles. They climbed Denali in Alaska via the West Buttress together. They climbed Pic Lenin in the Pamirs. They skied down Elbrus, both peaks east and west. Francys became the first American woman to ski Elbrus. She had a son, Paul Distefano, from a previous relationship. He lived with her sister in Connecticut. She had a goal she had been building toward for years. She wanted to be the first American woman to summit Everest without supplemental oxygen. Stacy Allison had become the first American woman to summit Everest with bottled oxygen in 1988. No American woman had summited without it. The achievement required not only altitude tolerance, but timing, weather, and a level of acclimatization most climbers spent multiple seasons building toward. Francys and Sergei trained heavily for 2 years. They climbed lower 8,000-meter peaks in preparation. They tested their bodies above 7,000 meters repeatedly. By the time they reached base camp on the north side, the Tibetan side, the less traveled side, in early May 1998, they were as prepared as preparation alone could make them. 2 prior summit attempts that week had failed. May 20, their headlamps had given out near the first step at around 8,500 meters. They had turned around. May 21, they had pushed only 50 to 100 meters above their high point before turning around again. By the time they began their 3rd attempt on May 22, they had already spent more than 72 hours in the death zone, the band above 8,000 meters where the body cell by cell begins to die, regardless of bottled oxygen. The Himalayan database treats 72 hours above 8,000 as the upper threshold for survivable exposure. Beyond that, organ failure cascades begin to accelerate even at rest. Francys and Sergei were both showing signs of accumulated hypoxia. Their pace had slowed. Their decision-making, which had been crisp at base camp 2 weeks earlier, was now operating in a degraded state neither of them could fully recognize from the inside. Higher up, the calculation would change. On the night of May 21st in Connecticut, her 11-year-old son Paul woke from a nightmare. In the dream, he had seen 2 climbers stranded on a mountain, trapped in white, unable to escape, the snow attacking them. He called his mother on the satellite phone at Advanced Base Camp. He told her about the dream. Francys told him she was proud of him for calling. She told him she loved him. She told him she would call him from the summit. She did not. The summit window on Everest is governed by what climbers call the 2 p.m. rule. Whatever your position on the upper mountain, if you are not at the summit by 2 p.m., you turn around. The risk of darkness, weather, and exhaustion on the descent doubles past that hour. Francys and Sergei summited late. They reached the top on May 22nd, well after the 2 p.m. cutoff. The exact time is contested in the historical record, with most reconstructions placing it between 6 p.m. and dusk. Francys had done what no American woman had done. She had climbed Mount Everest without supplemental oxygen. She had also placed herself at sundown at 8,848 meters with no bottled air and a return that would now be made in darkness. they began descending. Somewhere on the upper ridge in the dark, they became separated. The Himalayan database does not record exactly how. The most plausible reconstruction places Francys's collapse near the first step at 8,600 meters during the descent. Sergei made it down to the high camp alone sometime before dawn on May 23rd. When he arrived at camp the morning of May 23rd and Francys was not there, he understood what had happened. He had a working oxygen system. He had a fresh supply of oxygen bottles. He had an emergency medical kit. He turned around. He started climbing back up. The Snow Leopard, who had soloed the highest peaks of his country, who knew exactly what he was doing at altitude, ascended back into the death zone alone to find his wife. He carried the oxygen she had not used. He carried medicine for cerebral edema. He carried the survival gear they had not taken on their summit push to save weight. He disappeared into the upper mountain. He was never seen alive again. Sometime on the morning of May 23rd, an Uzbek climbing team passing upward on their own summit encountered Francys. She was lying just below the summit pyramid, partly conscious, severely frostbitten, hypothermic. The Uzbek team did what they could under the circumstances. They tried to help her down, but they could not move her safely. They left her in the position they had found her and continued up toward the summit. Whether this was the correct decision under expedition law is something the alpine community has debated for almost 3 decades. It is not what the channel asks. What the channel asks is, was the warning delivered? The Uzbek team's lead climber in the years that followed confirmed that he had told the South African team coming up the route behind them about her exact location. That South African team was Ian Woodall and Kathy O'Dowd. Woodall had led the controversial 1996 South African Everest expedition. O'Dowd was on her own summit bid, attempting to become the first South African woman to summit Everest from both the north and south sides. They were on the upper ridge on the morning of May 24th, the morning of the 3rd day Francys had been in the death zone. They saw what looked at first like a body in a purple down suit, frozen, a fixed feature of the slope. As they approached, they realized she was still alive. She was conscious. She was looking at them with her eyes open. Woodall would later describe the moment of recognition as the longest 5 seconds of his climbing career. He had walked past dozens of bodies on the upper mountain in his expeditions. This was the first one that had looked back at him. Woodall and O'Dowd abandoned their summit bid on the spot. They knelt beside her for more than an hour. Francys was still speaking. She had 3 phrases. She repeated them on a loop, without variation, without recognition of what they were saying back to her. "Don't leave me. Why are you doing this to me? I'm an American." O'Dowd would later describe what she heard in interviews and in her book published after the expedition. Francys was not actually responding to anything. She was on autopilot, like a stuck record. The phrases were the last functional output of a brain that was running out of oxygen and time. There was no expression in her eyes that indicated she registered them as people. There was only the loop. Frostbite had taken her face. O'Dowd would later say her skin had not turned the blotchy red of recent injury. It had turned hard and white, the smoothness of a wax figure. Her features were composed. Her hair had been arranged by the wind into something almost peaceful. She looked, O'Dowd told the press in the days that followed, like Sleeping Beauty. The nickname would chase Francys's body through the climbing media for the next 9 years. Every documentary, every magazine feature, every Wikipedia revision would carry that phrase, Sleeping Beauty of Everest. The South African expedition doctor at base camp, listening to the radio reports, confirmed what Woodall and O'Dowd already knew. There was nothing they could do. The mountain would decide the rest. Continuing to try to move her meant both of them dying on the slope rather than just one. They left her. They descended. The Himalayan database records the time as approximately mid-morning May 24th. Francys was still clipped to the fixed guide rope. She was still in her purple down suit. She was still alive when they walked away. She died sometime in the hours that followed. Her exact time of death was never recorded by anyone present. Sergei was never found in 1998. His body was discovered the following spring by Jake Norton, a member of the 1999 Mallory and Irvine search expedition. Sergei had fallen during his ascent back up to her. His ice axe and rope were near the body. He had been attempting the same impossible rescue that the Uzbek team and the South African team had abandoned, but he had been alone, on no oxygen, after no rest. For the next 9 years, Francys Arsentiev's body sat exposed on the upper north ridge of Everest, in the section now informally called the Rainbow Valley, by climbers for the bright color of preserved expedition clothing on the bodies that line it. Her purple jacket was visible from a long way down the route. She was a fixed point on the ascent, a marker climbers used for pace and elevation. Every commercial expedition that climbed Everest from the north between 1998 and 2007 passed her body. The guides knew her name. The guides knew her phrase, "I'm an American." New clients would be told the story at base camp briefings before they ever saw her. By 2005, the year of the deadliest commercial Everest season, to that point, her body had become a landmark in the high-altitude guiding curriculum, the cautionary case study every commercial outfit warned their clients about during summit day preparation. In 2007, Ian Woodall returned. The Tao of Everest expedition, which he led that season, had 2 stated objectives. The first was to move the body of the climber known as Green Boots, the British climber Tsewang Paljor, whose remains had become the most photographed body on the mountain, to a less conspicuous location. The second was to bury Francys. Woodall located her body on May 23, 2007, 9 years almost to the day after the morning he had knelt beside her. He wrapped her in an American flag. He performed a brief ritual at the site. He moved her body off the line of the route, dropping her to a lower location on the face where she would not be visible to climbers coming up. He returned to base camp. He gave a single press interview. He never returned to Everest. Paul Distefano was 20 when his mother's body was buried. He was 20 when the press cycle that had run his mother's image and her nickname through the climbing media for nearly a decade came to its quiet end. In a later interview, he said, "I don't know why she decided she had to do it without oxygen. I think she felt like she needed to prove something. He was 11 the night he had the dream. He was 11 the night he had called her, the last time he had spoken to her, 3 days before her summit, to tell her about a vision he had had of 2 climbers trapped in white, unable to escape." He had been right about the snow. He had been right about the 2 climbers. He had been right about both of them. He had been right about the color of the jacket. He had been right that she would not call him from the summit. What killed Francys Arsentiev was not the absence of oxygen alone. There are 16 climbers in the historical record who have summited Everest without supplemental oxygen and walked off the mountain alive. Reinhold Messner did it twice. Peter Habeler did it. Ed Viesters did it. The achievement is hard, but it is not impossible. What killed her was the time. 2 failed summit pushes had eaten her acclimatization reserve, 72 hours in the death zone, before her 3rd attempt had eaten her physical reserves. A summit reached after the 2 p.m. rule had stolen her descent window. A descent attempted in the dark, without oxygen, with a partner already operating in degraded cognition, had separated her from the only person on that mountain who would have come back for her. Sergei did come back for her. He died trying. The Snow Leopard, who had soloed the highest peaks of his country, who had skied down Elbrus with his wife, who had carried oxygen and medicine into the death zone alone on May 23rd, fell to his death somewhere above 8,200 meters before he could reach her. The deadliest decision on the north side of Mount Everest is not the decision to climb without oxygen. It is the decision to keep climbing past the hour the body has already decided the answer. Francys Arsentiev had 3 chances to turn around between May 20 and May 22, 1998. She took none of them. She became the first American woman to summit Everest without bottled air, and she became 2 days later the first American woman whose body sat for 9 years on the upper ridge where every commercial expedition coming up the north side now had to walk past her purple jacket and learn her 3 phrases by rote. The mountain kept her until Ian Woodall came back to bury her in an American flag. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more, click on your screen.